The international weekend has come to an end, but the domestic matters still take centre stage with Shell's women delivering on the field. Lots of pitch problems and a big interview to come later in the show. But first of all, the main man is here as usual every week. Good afternoon, Dunny. How was your weekend?
How we doing, Andy? Yeah, good, thanks. Weather improving a little bit. Bucket and spade weather, you might say, out there today. And some of the pitches in the league, as we witnessed this weekend, you could certainly bring a bucket and spade along and you wouldn't be out of place. But spirits are good.
Yeah, didn't want to go down that route just yet. But you back from your fancy trip to Waterford last week, and you decided to take another trip down to UCD on Saturday. Bucket and spade was optional, but you were there. Not a great crowd overall, judging by attendances, which is something we'll touch on a little bit later. But how was match day 3 in the UCD Bowl, Dunny?
Well, where does one start? I'll try and start on a positive note if I can, Andy. I'm between houses at the moment. We're looking to sell and move on, and we're kind of in a halfway house at the minute, out in Mount Merrion. Not a bad place to end up, near your old alma mater, Andy, near Oatlands College here. And so I'm kind of getting used to the area, and I went out for a run Saturday morning in the local park here, and in between Gaelic games getting ready and some hurling matches about to start, and saw a lot of Kilmacud Crokes gear and that kind of thing. I saw a team in all red in the distance, and I was like, wonder who that... I mean, there can't be that many teams in all red, but I thought this is a bit out of the way for a Shells team. But sure enough, as I jogged around the park, it was, I'd say they can't have been any older than 8 or 9. And just gave the Banish store up the Reds or something as I was jogging past. And I have to say, I was absolutely... I don't know if it was because the weather was good or because I was out and about and seeing them there. I was off to a flying start, so I was in great form. Something about seeing the young teams out and it being kind of normalised, this idea of just then being sort of cheek to gel with hurling teams at the same age and so on. It felt, now that we have no existential crisis at the club anymore, you know, a few years ago that mightn't have been so carefree to see something like that, but it's great to see, and like all the work that coaches and volunteers put in, and just to have that as a normal sight on a weekend in any given park across Dublin is fantastic. So I was absolutely buzzing. It's only around the corner to get down to the bowl. We've been there many times for the men and women, but we'll talk about on the field, because on the field was a very excellent performance, I thought, from Shells. And I don't want to detract from that in any way. But I have to say, from the moment I arrived at the bowl, it couldn't have been any more different from the experience I had last week in Waterford. A lack of buzz, a lack of crowd. As I was walking to where you'd normally get your tickets from outside, all the ticket offices were closed. I arrived with 25 minutes to kick off, so it was at 25 minutes to 3, which I don't think is unreasonably early by any stretch. No ticket office open, no signs up about price or anything like this. Only one turnstile ajar, so I was with 2 others. So we went up to the turnstile, nobody in it. So I sort of pushed through into the far side, because I saw some people with lanyards or something, someone who looked like they might be in charge of something, and I was shouted at immediately to get back through the turnstile and to hold on to, you know, as if I'd shown up 2 hours before kickoff or something. So like, you know, hold on. This fella comes running over to me, and I said, "Yeah, sorry." I said, "Just the ticket office isn't open, so I wasn't sure what to do." He says, "That's because this is the ticket office." As in
Nice.
at that turnstile. I was like, all right, well, I mean, you weren't here, so I paid for 3 adult tickets. That's 30 quid. There were 7 down in Waterford, but Dublin pricing or whatever. So 30 quid for three of us to come in. Um, Regarding like refreshments, like again, the fan zone was open down in Waterford, and that was really busy, firing out hot food, cold drinks, sweets, and everything for the kids. And it was busy from minute one to at the end of the match. The refreshments area in UCD, they had cans of Coke and they had bottles of water, none of which are refrigerated. And this isn't a one off, because I remember being there last year and being given a bottle of water off the floor, just picked off the ground, possibly given to me for free. I don't know, because they couldn't look me in the eye and charge me for a tepid, lukewarm bottle of water off the ground. So that wasn't a great start. And then like little things about the teams were announced, the starting 11s were announced, and then that was the end of the announcements for the rest of the match. There were no goal scorers announced. There were no substitutions announced. And I remember saying on the pod here last week that part of the thing that I enjoyed about the match day down in Waterford as well is like, because it was their first day, their first home game, everybody stayed to the end. And even though the result was not going their way by any means, by the end, there was players applauded off and on. Every sub who made their appearance was clapped on, and every sub who was coming off the pitch was given an ovation as well. And it was just, the vibes were very good. I mean, to not even have someone to announce who's coming on and off or who scored a goal isn't really good enough. So I mean, I don't know where else to go after that. It was obviously the crowd was poor. It was the lowest crowd of the weekend, even in the weekend where crowds everywhere seem to be poor. I have to say as well, most of my ire is directed firmly and squarely at DLR and what they're bringing to the table. And that's a kind of an open-ended question, I think. Like, what are they bringing to the table? Why are they in this league? But I did say it on the pod last week that I thought, seeing as the men didn't have a game this weekend just gone, we should have made an effort to have a decent representation. And I thought as a fan group for the club, we didn't hold our end up terribly well there either. There weren't enough shells there for me. The attendance was 177 overall, and most of them probably would have been shells or neutrals, but still I think we didn't cover ourselves in glory off the field there either. So my early morning joie de vivre was by the time the full time whistle went, I was happy to be gone out of the place, and I hope I'm not back there in a hurry, Andy. Let's put it that way.
Well, it sounds like you went from Deer Park to Dear Oh Dear. But yeah, there's a lot to get through there, Dunny. First of all, we'll just touch briefly on the pitch. I think everyone has probably seen the photos, and there's been a lot of discussion as to why the fixtures were switched from Tolka to UCD. That's kind of stuff is above our pay grade. It's we can only judge on what's going on. So I did watch a bit. Sorry, Dunny. I did watch highlights of UCD on Friday night. Specifically to see what the pitch looked like. And if you recall, there was a bit of rain Friday into the early hours of Saturday, but the pitch looked dreadful. And if you can just for a moment think, this is the highest level of women's football in Ireland. I know it's sometimes like judging apples and oranges, but can you imagine Chelsea and Man City, who were played yesterday in the UK, imagine them turning up to play on junk like that? It's just not acceptable. And it's always people saying, oh, the FAI should do this and do that. But clubs themselves have to get their own houses in order.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we could probably see what was about to happen before it unfolded, pitch-wise, because the amount of people just on Twitter and other places that were complaining about, and it was a pretty uninspiring game in the first division the night before, a 0-0 draw between UCD and Treaty. I mean, God help anyone who showed up to that and then followed it up with having the DLR experience the following day. I hope they're getting the help they need if that transpired. But we could see that the pitch was going to give trouble. The reasons behind the switch, again, as you say, is above our pay grade. I've heard a few things. There were issues, I know, with the shower facilities in the away dressing rooms in Tolka. Perhaps this was viewed as an opportunity to fix them if UCD or /DLR were amenable to the switch. Obviously, Tolka's pitch has also come in for quite a bit of criticism this season, and maybe the idea of having a week without a game on the pitch as well seemed like a good idea. I'm not sure anyone might have necessarily predicted just how bad the pitch would look. Now, it's being treated with sand and so on in Belfield, so, or at the Bowl. So, I mean, is that the best way to do it? I didn't see anyone out prior to the match on Saturday attending to the surface in any way. That's not to say it didn't happen, but there was no evidence that I could see that it was happening as an ongoing sort of job. So yeah, I mean, frankly, I think on that sort of basis, I think our team deserve a huge amount of credit, an absolutely massive amount of credit for scoring 4 goals on that surface, for playing the standard of football that they played on that surface, for not using it as an excuse, because this could have been after the opening weekend that we had we slipped up and allowed something like a pitch to become a leveler against a team like DLR, this could be something that you'd look back at the end of the season and say, oh, if it wasn't for that pitch, or we didn't get any luck and blah blah blah. There's not enough league games to spare in this division to give any away. So I really do commend the professionalism. If there was anyone who performed admirably and with professionalism on Saturday at the Belfield Bowl, they were all wearing red. So hats off to them.
Well, the performance itself, Dunny, as you said, was impressive. I think we're, again, only 3 games in, but the first game against Rovers really was a kick to the privates, the way it finished. But the structure of the team now, Owen seems to be sticking more or less to sort of a core 8, 9, maybe 9, 10 players. Mackenzie Anthony, who we mentioned last week, she started this week. I'm going to say, I think if I recall, I think I said Mackenzie could have a big impact this year. Seeing her on the field, though, Dunny, she's a much bigger, stronger sort of presence about her than what we have. And she scored a fantastic goal. But overall, how was her performance on the day?
Yeah, she was the star player for me. Herself and Rebecca Devereaux sort of fought their way into the starting 11, I think, with performances prior to this. But as I said, when she came on last week down in Waterford, I really liked her direct running. She used her physicality last week. She's tall and she's broad and strong. Gemma Quinn is probably the nearest we'd have, who could match her in that for the sort of brawn that she brings to the party. She used it, as I said, to score that header last week. But she's got a turn of pace. She's got a trick. And we saw a lot more sort of strings to her bow, I think, this Saturday gone than we had the previous weekend, because she was played a little bit further on the wing. She was kind of drifting out to the left wing a fair bit in the first half. She was doing cutbacks. She was bringing other people into play. She was getting crosses in. Was a bit reticent to shoot off her left foot at times in the first half when opportunities were there. I'm sure the pitch probably wasn't helping her there as well, to sort of to gamble on yourself when the ball's bobbling around on a piece of sand. But when she backed herself in the second half on her more favoured right foot, it was an absolutely gorgeous goal. And no more than she deserved. Obviously, she probably could have had a couple of penalties as well. She was fouled last week for a penalty. She's really been an absolute nuisance, and it's that sort of mix of skill, direct running, and the physicality that she has that's really been a handful. I think as well, you were saying that Owen is sort of sticking to a core group. The squad and its depth was something that came up in the fans forum at the start of the year, that that it was said that we've kind of gone for smaller numbers, higher level of quality, perhaps, and we're being hit with a little bit of an injury bug at the minute. Alex Kavanagh wasn't stripped to play. Gemma Quinn wasn't stripped to play, and Rachel Graham, I think, was named on the bench, but you get the feeling, when you're there a whopping 25 minutes before kickoff and you see people warming up, who's really going to be available for minutes, and Rachel didn't look available for minutes for me. So that's two players who could arguably be your starting midfield out. So Evie Clancy had to deputise more centrally this weekend with Roman McLaughlin, and frankly, you wouldn't have. The best thing you could say is that you wouldn't have noticed that we were down two incredible central midfield players, because they dealt with absolutely everything. They bossed midfield. It was a non-issue, which when I saw the team and saw who we were missing, I thought it could be. So kudos to Evie as well, particularly, and obviously Roma has just been excellent this season.
Yeah, Roma and Avine, two of the very best in that position. I think any team in the country would love to have them two as their first choice in the centre of the park. Quick word on Pearl again. Another goal, but I think Pearl will be going to bed happy having another clean sheet. It's vitally important now, isn't it, to go on a bit of a run just to keep those points tipping away.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the manner of the goals on the opening day were sickening. Two errors of different hues, but to have them kind of come along like buses, one after the other like that was really bad. So to go back to back clean sheets, 8 in the right end, 0 in Euronet, both away from home, of course, both surfaces, arenas, occasions bringing their own challenges is fantastic. Waterford went on to score and win at the weekend themselves, so there's a bit of life in them. They're obviously, who knows where DLR will finish, but they did ask more questions. To be fair, I thought of the rear guard than Waterford did last week. There was one. We were never really uncomfortable, I thought, but there was one sort of last ditch tackle that Perla made in was it the first or the second half? I think it was the first half, where there was a chance of a break, and it was 1v1. She kind of slid in on one knee, won the ball cleanly, and it's just what she's like when she's just so assured, comfortable, confident to take a touch. Nobody was using the pitch as an excuse to not take a first touch, to not show for the ball under a bit of pressure, to not try and pass out from the back. We didn't go direct, despite the fact that we have some brawn now, as I said, in Mackenzie, that we wouldn't have had last year, perhaps, and the fact that the pitch is begging to basically go over it rather than across it. So 100%, it's a really nice bounce back from an early wobble. And ultimately, you take those last 5 minutes or so out of that Rovers game, and we're sitting top of the league, absolutely delighted with life. So great signs. Keep faith with the team, and things going really well so far.
I think if anyone wants to watch the the Shells media pages over the weekend, they had Aquiva, who does the social media. She was at the pitch level. Particularly for the last goal for Kate Mooney. You could see the ball, it took an awful bobble just before Kate managed to sky it, but thankfully she skied it into the net. So, but just finally on the pitch, Dunny, the stats show that women footballers are, I think, 2 to 3 or maybe even 4 times more at risk of cruciate ligament injuries than men due to the way we're built. Now, I think it's a bit of a miracle. We've heard no reports of any injuries from that game, but thank God everyone seemed to get through it, because the actual standard of the field was just completely unacceptable. As you mentioned there, like DLR, it's not their field. We understand that, but as a club and as a team, I think you ask a very good question, Dunny, as to where do they go from here? Because They've been part of the league now for many years in different guises, but their home attendances are very poor. Attendances across the whole league are still quite poor. Is there, where do we go from here in terms of, first of all, our clubs? The clubs have to take responsibility now for trying to reach attendance targets per home game. It's very easy to keep saying the FAI need to do more, or the League of Ireland have to do more. If we look at ourselves in shells, should we be saying like, okay, next week or this week we're playing Peamount, we need 500 people at that game, or we need to hit a target of 6, or whatever it is, just to keep going and going? Or do clubs just toss a coin and say, well, whoever turns up turns up? Because if that's the case, it's just not going to grow.
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's very frustrating for the likes of yourself and myself, I think, who who view the games in the same way that we view whatever happens on a Friday. And I consider myself lucky now to be at a club with people in charge who are saying the right things, and I'm hearing the right kind of sounds coming out of the club now regarding, like, I know that we do have minimum targets for home attendances now. I know that as part of the deal with DCC around our 250-year lease at Tolka Park, it's baked into that agreement that we have 2 community officers, 1 male, 1 female, and the sort of the raison d'etre of Kristen Sample is like one of her main issues now is to increase home attendances, and I have every faith that she will do everything she can to get those up. And so far, our numbers have been good. Our numbers have been 600 or thereabouts for both home games, which would have been the high. If we had that on Saturday, we would have been the highest attended game in the league. Now, it's not, earth shattering, but I think that's what we need to do. We need to get 500-600 every home game, build from that. It wasn't that long ago, 500 or 600 on a Friday night was a sort of a regular figure that you'd see. Unfortunately, our bedfellows in the league, it's a real flotsam and jetsam group of characters that, some are making an effort, some are making no effort. I mean, I was shocked to see what happened in Peamount. I don't know, we mightn't have time to go into today, but the reason that their game was called off an hour before kickoff, from what I've read from the Galway manager, is nothing short of a scandal. There was, I believe, 252 people in Tala on a weekend where there was no men's football, watching the game changers out there with an Irish international, in Russia Littlejohn, who's just who's been at the last World Cup, who played her first game last week, threw a free kick from 30 yards into the top corner. She can't do much more than she's doing. And they won well there at the weekend. There's nobody there to see it. So are they doing enough? I think, frankly, we were the best. We came off it. And I know that Neil Doyle and Kristen Sample and other people behind the scenes at the club are going to put in the effort to make sure that we get back to where we were as being top of the pile. But it is deflating, and I was left feeling deflated by having to sort of share league space with these teams that it kind of feels like it just drags the whole thing down. It's like, you can do your bit, but if the whole league itself, because it's so small, isn't progressing, and if there isn't, and I wrote it down here, doesn't meet the basic standards of acceptability at this level. And that's how I felt about the pitch. That's how I felt about the matchday experience. That's how I feel when you see their results. That's their 3rd defeat in a row. I'm not sure if they've scored a goal. What are they bringing to the table? And I'd also look around and be like, where are St. Pat's? Where is Dundalk? These were things that Drogheda, I could go on. These are things that were supposedly baked in, that if you wanted to get your license to compete as a football club in the League of Ireland, that you were going to be given a certain amount of time. You were going to be given time to do your underage teams, and you're at elite level. And slowly but surely, then there was going to be a point given to every club that if you didn't meet that, there would be repercussions, whether they be financial or whether they be barring to entry or something like this, to try and prod people into taking part. Now, I don't know. I'll look at St. Pat's. They have billionaire backing from the US now. They're playing friendlies in the middle of the season in Minnesota or wherever the hell they're going. They're run by a millionaire anyway. They are spending money like it's water there. So where's their team? And how have they not been taken to task over not putting a senior team in? It's an absolute disgrace. And they can talk about Richmond Park being this glorious billiard table of a surface and whatever. Yeah, well, little wonder, considering they couldn't give a shite about women's football, as far as I'm concerned, and they don't have a second senior team playing on it. And perhaps if and when, and hopefully it does come sooner rather than later, if and when it does happen, they might be brought down to earth a little bit as to what it takes to keep a pitch in 2025 and beyond.
Yeah, if anyone wants to listen back to the interview I did with Shauna Cook a few weeks ago, I think it's episode 6 or 7, we touched on that, and we did mention St. Pat's and Dundalk in particular, these so-called big clubs who seem to put all their eggs into one basket. And as you said, when you have Garrett Callagher and all his buddies in the US with very, very deep pockets, I would say the salary of someone like Jake Mulroney or Chris Forrester would fund women's team for a season. I'm not saying get rid of those players, but you know what I'm trying to say. Dunny, we've got a lot to get through. We'll just quickly move to this weekend. Shells are back in Tolka against Peamount. Old rivals, first time this season. Shells played them twice last year, of course, 2 wins for Shells. Peamount have a new manager in Emma Donoghue, who's been there for some time in the background. Shells looking good. But can we just talk very quickly about that pitch issue? Galway had turned up for their game in PRL Park, I think it's called, in Greenogue on Saturday, 5 p.m. kickoff. The referee couldn't go ahead with the game because the pitch wasn't in good order. A lot of issues, and we've had comments today, coming out today from Phil Trill, the Galway manager. Now, these are his comments. There's 2 sides to every story, but he said we were told at 4 p.m. that the grass pitch wasn't playable. And then we found out there was an under-17 League of Ireland game on the same pitch that was played at 1 p.m. earlier that afternoon. There's no ground staff available. This is absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? It's just completely unacceptable. Now, Peamount haven't come out, so look, they could come out with some amazing comment to say, look, there's extraordinary circumstances. But on face value, this is comedy stuff. You'd see this up in Fawcett Circus. It's just not good enough.
Yeah, I actually couldn't believe those comments when I read them from the Galway manager. It's absolutely staggering. The fact that if we were speaking about our situation with DLR/UCD and kind of feeling on Friday that with the weather and whatnot that this pitch could be an issue. So everybody in Dublin knew that would be the case. The fact that there was an under-17s game slated to take place at 1 p.m. If there was any doubt, if there was any jeopardy whatsoever that the senior game between Galway and Pease was going to go ahead or could be impacted by having 90 minutes plus of football happen only a couple of hours before, that game should not have happened. How that went ahead and then subsequently the senior game has to suffer and be called off after Galway have travelled, fans as well, is mind-blowing. Also, there's a full Astro facility in Greenogue, and the Galway manager has said that he was told that the game could be moved to that. That's not acceptable either, frankly. But while you're there, you'd rather play than not play. But somehow that didn't occur either. Now, he's gone in and said that the Peamount team, basically accused them of, to my mind, the worst thing you can accuse any team of is cowardice, and being afraid to play them. He's saying that they were down a few bodies and they deliberately obfuscated the situation around the pitch, that they were happy to let that game go ahead, in with the view that it would do exactly what it did and damage the pitch beyond the point where a referee could reasonably allow the game to go ahead. I mean, I can't remember a time this side of Pat Dolan, Roddy Collins, that, Ger McKeely, where barbs between clubs and managers were thrown around like that. Unfortunately, I hope we don't come out on the wrong side of it now, being innocent parties in this, that you're going to have. That's the team talk done for Peamount on Saturday, saying that they've been accused of being cowards who don't want to play and who were afraid of getting beaten. So, I mean, that's all they're going to need to get up for that game. That they'll feel that they have to put in extra effort, double the effort. So we're going to have to really be on it. I hope some of the injuries can clear up, because our bench was very thin. We did extraordinarily well on Saturday, but the opposition was limited and our bench was very thin. So I hope that we have a few more senior heads back, and if we do so, then there's no reason we can't beat Peas. But it does put us in a slightly more awkward position than I would have liked.
It does, yeah. It makes it a bit more spicy on Saturday. I'm sure top players like Karen Duggan won't be impressed hearing those comments from Galway. It does add a bit of spice to things. Dunny, can I ask you to put your neck on the chopping block for your prediction while you're here?
Versus Peas, let's go.
Yeah,
let's go 2-0 Shells.
Fingers crossed. Well, as there's no men's game on Saturday, of course, it would be great to see as many Reds there as possible. Make Tolka that intimidating place. I'll be on LOI TV coverage as usual, making a few more bloopers. Don't forget, it's a 4 p.m. kickoff, 4 p.m. So hope to see as many of you there as possible. Now, coming up in just a moment, we have our big interview. But some housekeeping, Dunny. We've the Reds, the boys 1895. The guys are responsible for those fantastic displays on the riverside that we all love taking photos of and applauding. Well, they're running a last man standing League of Ireland competition. It's an entry for just €10. There's some brilliant prizes. Cash, shells, jerseys, Jack Moylan jerseys, Luck Street vouchers, and all money raised will go towards future displays. And that's something that I think we can all agree is a wonderful expression and image when people look at what we do on match nights in Tolka. So Lee McDermott is organising it. I will include all the details on the show notes. So when you're viewing this or listening to this, scroll down the show notes. You'll see all the contact details for Lee. It commences on March 28th. So you've got a few more days to go. First Division and Premier Division. We have a lot of people, particularly in Shelbourne, Dunny, who talk a lot about the League of Ireland. Let's see them put their money where their mouth is. And we'll see who knows. We'll see who's talking crap. So best of luck to Lee and all the lads there from Boys 1895, and keep up the amazing work, fellas. Well done. One last notice, it's just for anyone. We've had a lot of questions in. Big interview coming up now in just a moment. But as always, please get in touch across all our media platforms. You can send an email. All the information is on the show notes. I'm going to shut up for now. Up next, the big interview with Barry Crossan.